It's the Happy Families podcast with Dr. Justin Coulson, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. My name's Susie. Luke's with me as well. And today we're discussing a question that came through from Angelique, which is all about mobile phones at school. Dr. Justin Coulson joins us in the studio, and Angelique's asked a question, Justin. This is right up your alley.
I'm ready.
Mobile phones at school, yay or nay?
As if they're the only two options that Justin's going to adhere to.
This is such a provocative thing. Now, some background on this, and I'm so glad that Angelique's asked. I'm guessing she saw that in the news. In Victoria, there's now a blanket ban across... well, look, it's an opt-in system, but basically there's a blanket ban for primary schools, not high schools, primary schools, on mobile devices. No mobile devices allowed in state primary schools in Victoria as a result of this big inquiry. The New South Wales government are considering it for New South Wales as well. Mm-hmm. And every now and again, you hear a principal pop up in the news somewhere saying we've banned mobile phones across the board, and we just think that this is what our school community needs.
Kindergartens?
Well, that was my first thing. How many 7-year-olds really need a mobile phone? The interesting thing here is, and I recognise that I run the risk of parent shaming here. It's not my intention, okay? If you're a parent and your 7-year-old has a mobile phone, I'm sure that you've got a really good reason for it, as Luke's mobile phone goes off in the background. I'm sure you've got a great reason for it. But the reality is, most kids in primary school really don't need a mobile phone. But once one's got one, all the other kids want one.
That's it.
And, with parents being as busy as we are, and many families, you're either a single parent or you're a double income family where both parents are at work, and you want to be able to contact the kids, and it's so convenient, let's face it, not to mention all the apps where you can just track where the kids are to make sure they really are at school when they said they were going to be there. There's a bunch of arguments for having mobile phones, even with younger kids, although I still don't think it's necessary. I also hear parents with children who have special needs. Maybe they've got some mental health issues, some anxieties, and they really want their kids to be able to contact them at any time because...
A safety net. It's an understanding that you can call me if you need me if in that situation. So I can understand that there could be comfort for both the child and the parent in that scenario.
So that's my empathy piece right there.
But
for primary school kids in particular, I just think this is the right decision. I'm not into banning. It's typically something that I argue really strongly against. And I'm also, as you said earlier, Luke, I'm not the kind of guy that says yes or no. Well, it has to be one of the two. Usually I'll find a middle way somewhere. What I do know is that when I talk to principals, when I look at what little evidence there is, and the reality is there is not a lot of evidence, and what evidence is out there is not brilliantly done scientifically. But the evidence that is out there and the anecdotal conversations that I've had with principals and parents is pretty much this. When you tell kids that they can't have phones at school, they concentrate better. They're more active. They're more socially engaged. There's not a single domain that you could measure that doesn't improve with the removal of the devices for those 6 hours between 9 and 3.
Mm.
I can, and as a grown-up who has a habit of looking at my device a lot throughout the day, that's just the mere fact that you can, if you're waiting on something, if you're thinking about someone's going to message me, and then you check it, or you want to check it all the time. And so what you're saying is when there's absolutely no choice to check it, well, that stuff doesn't occupy your brain in the same level because you just have no choice of it.
So my kids go to a school where the rule was brought in that there's no mobile devices. I'm talking about high school kids now. Mm-hmm. They're allowed to have a device, but if they're caught using it, they're asked to put it away straight away. There are no devices in the playground. And we actually made the switch to the school in the fairly recent past. My year 9 daughter came to me after a couple of days at the school and said, Dad, I don't think I'm going to bother taking my phone to school anymore. I'm the only one that's got one out, and I actually feel like I'm a bit rude and I'm ignoring everyone when I'm on it.
I love it. What?
I know. What 15-year-old girl says that about their phone? I looked at her and smiled. I said, if you feel good about that.
If you think that's best, honey.
That's your choice, and I'll respect it.
Yeah. Again, when we look at the research evidence, what happens is when you're focused on something and your phone goes ding and pulls you away from it, that little red notification comes up, the screen begins to glow so welcomingly. What happens is your brain shuts down what it's doing and it diverts attention across to the device. Once you put the device down 76 minutes later, you go back to what you were doing before, if you can remember what it was, and your brain has to go through that whole processing thing to get back to where you were up to get going again, by which time your phone has gone off again. And the quality of our learning just isn't as good.
Yeah.
Again, there's not a heap of research in Australian schools, and that's what I'm focusing on here, Aussie schools and the research. There's just not heaps. But what it does seem to indicate, especially for high school kids, is they're going to concentrate better. They're going to process more deeply. They're going to retain more effectively the information that they're supposed to be learning at school if they don't have their devices. Now, the reality is they're sitting at school and they're still connected to the internet through their PC or through their iPad or through the whatever other screen they're using for their learning. But it seems that the idea that we should minimize access to devices and particularly phones during school hours and maybe even during after school hours, I think it is actually in the best interest of the kids.
Well, I think as a parent, I certainly like it when my children are looking at me when I talk to them. Just, I don't know if that's strange for these days, but I do like it when I feel like I've got their attention. So I don't know why I would put them in a scenario with a different adult where they're going to be distracted by a phone. And I agree. I understand that there's circumstances where you might need a child to have a phone so that after school you can contact them and make a phone call. But I know even in our primary school, they're very, very strict about mobile phones. And even this year, they had an issue of bullying on the playground because of a photo that was taken on a phone during school hours. So all of this about concentration and learning is really only one side of the mobile phone in schools debate, isn't it? There's the bullying side as well.
Yeah, it is. And we've talked about all the reasons that you might want your kids to have a phone at school. And I think that there are some legitimate reasons there. I don't know that they're strong enough. I think that we can get around those issues and those obstacles. Certainly the advantages to not having them are very strong. And that social aspect, I mean, the kids have got their devices out of school and they can still do that kind of stuff. They can bully, they can send inappropriate images, they can get up to all sorts of no good outside of school hours. But when they're not on their devices at school, you certainly reduce the opportunity for them to do it there. And again, that's a plus. I like to be a little bit countercultural. I like to go against the grain a little bit with these kinds of conversations. But in this case, I just can't see too many great reasons for encouraging schools to give kids access to their phones. I just don't think there's a strong argument for it.
There's somebody that I know who wanted their child to have a phone because of a situation in there for them to be able to call the child when they needed to get a hold of them, but they didn't want them to be able to get caught up in all this stuff that we've been talking about. So they got them a Nokia 3210.
Well, that's something I learned from you. Smart parents give their kids dumb phones. Yeah. That's a Dr. Justin Coulson line.
How do you like that? And it's harder and harder to find dumb phones to give your kids.
Amazon.
But
I just searched it on my smartphone.
But there are a range of other products that are on the market now. I won't name them here, but there's a range of other products that are on the market whereby your kids can have access to you, or you can track them. You can do the stuff to reduce your own anxiety. If need be. Those products are out there. They're relatively inexpensive, certainly a lot cheaper than a smartphone. And then again, there's that other extraordinary technology where you can call the office and ask the office staff to go and get your child from class. If something is that serious, we always have that fail-safe, and I think that's a pretty handy way to go.
Yep.
Great conversation to be had. Dr. Justin Coulson has been our guest talking about this. You can find out more at happyfamilies.com.au. Thanks, Angelique, for your question. If you're keen to have Dr. Justin Coulson come and speak at your school or corporate event, find out more details at his website, justincoulson.com.